Hi, this is Contixo Repair, and today we're going to be replacing the onboard flight controller inside the drone. And all you're going to need to do to replace the flight controller is have a number 0 Phillips head screwdriver. And we're going to start by flipping over the drone, and we're going to unscrew the bottom shell from the top shell, and there's going to be little screws around the outside of the shell. Flip it around to access the rest of the screws. We're going to flip the frame over, and we're going to gently pry the top half of the frame shell from the bottom half. And you can see the flight controller. And a reason you may need to replace the flight controller is the motor drivers may burn out. When you have a burnt out motor, and a good way to know if that is the case is if you plug the battery in and right away the motor starts spinning, or when you want to control the quadcopter and startup, one of your motors isn't spinning and you have already replaced a motor that is not spinning, then you have an issue with the motor drivers on the flight controller. And to continue to removing it, we're going to start by disconnecting the motor leads. And you're going to want to remember which motor leads go where. And a good way to remember is the propellers that are labeled A will have the red and blue leads directly parallel to those two propellers. And then the B propellers will have the red and black motor leads also parallel to those two propellers. Next, we're going to remove the altitude sensor, which is in the front right here, and then the on and off switch just unplugs like that, and the video wire unplugs right there. And then we're going to unplug the LED connectors, and there's also an LED connector on the top frame that I pulled out earlier. And with the LED leads, they can go anywhere on the flight controller. Doesn't matter where they go as long as there's an open port for the LEDs, you can plug them in there. So now that we have everything unplugged, we're going to flip the frame around. And we're going to remove the battery connector leads. So all you're going to have to do is unscrew this black piece that holds the connector in place over there, and then you're going to pull up on the battery connector and pull it out. Next, we are going to remove the 4 screws holding the flight controller. place those to the side. Now you're just going to grab your flight control board and put it to the side, as is no longer good. And then you're going to grab your new flight controller and place it onto the drone frame. And you're going to want to have the battery connector going towards the back of the frame where the on and off switches, and have the receiver antenna going towards the front of the frame. Make sure you install it this way and not that way or any other way. Make sure the battery leads go to the back of the drone. So you're going to put that in place. You're going to grab your screws with the flat washer head. There should be 4 of them. And you're going to screw the flight controller in. And also, a good way to tell if your flight controller is burnt out is any one of these motor drivers. There will be charring around the bottom, and it will have a burnt electronic smell. Okay, so now that we installed all the screws for the flight controller, we're going to grab the battery connector. Make sure you have the little indentation that comes out of the battery connector pointed towards the front of the frame, and you're just going to insert it into the battery connector slot. Grab the battery connector holder, hold it in place, and screw it into place. Now for reconnecting all the wires, we can start with the motors. And if you remember before, the B propellers will have the motor wires directly parallel on each edge of the flight controller frame, like so. And the A propellers will have the red and blue motor connectors inserted parallel as well. And then next we can do the on and off switch, and that's just going to be plugged in to the back of the flight controller next to the red wire. And then the altitude sensor is going to be plugged in to the front port near the motor connections and the LED connections by the receiver. And then the video connector is going to be plugged in to the back of the flight controller right there. And then all that's left are the LED connectors, and those can go anywhere on the nearest side. And make sure when you're plugging all these pins in that you not forcefully insert them, and you insert them facing the correct way. And a good way to tell that is you'll see the silver part of the connector, and that's always going to go into the connector with the open part facing out. And those just connect into any of those. Now we're just going to push our wires down a bit to keep them out of the way of the top frame. We're going to flip our quadcopter around, grab the top part of our frame, and we're also going to plug that in to any available LED port. Like so. And then we're going to snap the frame on, and it should snap into place fairly easily. And now all we need to do is reinsert our screws and screw the bottom and top shell together. And that is how you replace the main flight controller on the F10 drone.